Okay, I'll begin. Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm Zanae Dames, the Marketing and Events Manager at Digital, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our informational webinar today, Fuel Your AI Innovation, How to Leverage the AI Compute Access Fund for SMEs. As myself and much of the digital team are based in Vancouver, British Columbia, we respectfully acknowledge that we work, learn, and live on the traditional, ancestral, and territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared with our audiences in the coming week. If at any point during the session you have a question, please type it into the chat and we'll address them at the end during the Q&A portion. That's it from me, and I'll be handing it over to Jen, our Director of Intellectual Property and Partnerships, to get this webinar started. Thanks, Jen.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Janae. Bonjour and welcome, everyone. We've got folks joining us from across the country for this information webinar to learn more about the potential funding opportunities to accelerate the development and deployment of AI in Canada and drive economic growth. Next slide, please. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Launched in March 2025, the AI Compute Access Fund is a national initiative designed to provide opportunities for Canadian innovators with access to advanced computing resources to accelerate the development and deployment of made-in-Canada AI solutions to market. Whether you're building new AI solutions or enhancing existing ones, the fund provides financial support to qualified Canadian companies, SMEs with fewer than 500 employees with R&D based in Canada, with strong potential for economic and social impact, and helping to overcome one of the biggest barriers to AI innovation, computational capacity. With a rapidly approaching application deadline, the aim today is for you to gain insights into how the fund works, preparing your application and navigating the submission portal, followed by a Q&A with practical guidance from key team members that are joining us today. Next slide, please. As one of Canada's global innovation clusters with a pan-Canadian presence and a diverse community of over 1,600 organizations, we are focused on advancing digital solutions in key areas critical to Canada's health and prosperity, including mining, health and life sciences, housing, and skilling, pulled together through consortiums of innovators, industries, researchers, community, and government partners. Next slide, please. As highlighted in the previous slide, these consortiums come together better than any single organization could alone to solve these big problems, and Digital provides non-dilutive funding and ensures that the customer voice is fully engaged from the start in the building of these made-in-Canada, world-class digital solutions. Next slide, please. Our impact includes deployment in every single Canadian province and territory, and now in almost every country and all continents except for Antarctica, through the World Health Organization's deployment of a solution which was developed in Vancouver that has formed the backbone of a global clinical decision support guidance for antimicrobial resistance. Significant portion of our co-investments in IP asset generation is through SMEs, and our investments in supporting talent and workforce development are helping communities and individuals to participate in the global digital economy. And now I have the pleasure of introducing my ecosystem colleagues with the AI Compute Access Fund. Please join me in welcoming Program Officers Alex McKenzie, Peter Raby, and Andy Ong, as well as Leanne Want, Operations Manager. And with that now, Alex, I hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Jen. I'm just going to give my colleague Andy a moment to share the presentation on the screen, and then I'll get started. All right. So thank you so much again, and thanks to Digital for having us today. So my name's Alex, and I work at the AI Compute Access Fund with an amazing small team, and some of them are on the line today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to run you through the program, how to know if you're eligible, how it works, what the application process will look like, all of those key bits of information. And then once we're done running through the presentation, I'm going to take you onto our website and just show you really quickly where you can find really valuable resources to help you build a strong application. We've worked really hard to make sure we have those resources available to you, so I want you to know where to find them. So let's just go ahead and jump in, Andy, if you want to click to the next slide. So I'll start by giving just a little bit of background, building on some of Jen's background on how the program came to be. So the government announced this $2.4 billion investment over 5 years to invest in the sovereign AI compute strategy. And The aim of the strategy is to launch new initiatives that give Canadian researchers and AI companies the tools they need to be competitive globally. And then over last summer, the government launched essentially a public consultation to inform and design the implementation of these initiatives. And part of what came of that was the AI Compute Access Fund. And this was because what we learned was that one of the largest barriers to innovation in AI in Canada is the cost of compute. So as far as what the program is doing about it, the AI Compute Access Fund is a $300 million 3-year federal initiative that supports Canadian businesses with AI projects that are valued between $100,000 and $5 million. So by offsetting these compute costs that can be very limiting, the program enables broader access to the infrastructure needed for advanced AI development. As far as what the program covers, we help cover the cost of your cloud-based AI compute services. So if you are working with a Canadian cloud-based compute provider, we will cover up to 2/3 of the costs of the payments to that provider. If you're working with a non-Canadian compute provider, we will cover up to half of those costs. So you'll see a little bit of an incentive there to work with Canadian compute providers. As far as what our program objectives are, first of all, we're trying to accelerate AI innovation in Canada. So by subsidizing the cost of this cloud-based compute, the program enables Canadian businesses to experiment, iterate, and scale AI models faster, removing this major barrier to entry for AI development. We also want to support the commercialization of AI projects. So as you may know, many businesses struggle to move from that R&D to market-ready stage due to this high cost. And this fund will help bridge that gap and help you bring your AI solutions to market more effectively and competitively. We're also looking to foster a diverse ecosystem of compute providers. The program encourages the use of a broad range of external compute suppliers. Like I said, there's an incentive to use a Canadian compute supplier, but we do allow non-Canadian ones as well. And that'll just ensure that you as the applicant get to choose the best fit infrastructure for your needs for your project. And then finally, we're looking to promote innovation, commercialization, and supplier diversity. So the fund not only stimulates innovation, but also supports the life cycle of AI development from research to deployment, while encouraging that competitive and diverse supplier landscape that benefits the broader tech ecosystem in general. So with that said, we'll move into the next slide for our eligibility. Thanks, Andy. So here we have our eligibility criteria. All of this is on our website and in our program guide, but I'm going to walk you through it now. The key is that you have to meet all of these eligibility criteria to qualify for the program. Some of the key things here listed are that this is for Canadian for-profit businesses who are developing AI products or services. So we're looking for businesses who have less than 500 full-time employees. And in order to be eligible, applicants have to be revenue generating and or be able to demonstrate investor interest through a minimum of Series A financing. So on that piece, we ask for 2 years of financial statements in our application, just to give you an idea of the stage that we're looking at. And the businesses that we're looking at are generally around technology readiness level 6. If you're not technology readiness level 6 or you don't have 2 years of financial statements, they don't render you ineligible. But this is just to give you an idea of the kind of stage of business we're looking for. Applicants also have to have an R&D team that's based in Canada, and they have to be willing to carry out their operations in Canada as well. Applicants need to have or will be expected to provide a commercialization plan to be able to demonstrate a clear path to market. And a big piece is that before applicants sign their contribution agreement, should their application be successful, they'll also have to have a contract or some form of agreement with a compute service provider. And this is because the entire idea of our program is to help cover the costs of your payments to your compute service provider. So you're going to have an agreement in place to show that you are working with one for your project. Next slide, please, Andy. Thank you. So we'd like to think that our application journey is fairly user-friendly because we're actually currently working to create sort of a more modern application experience, and we're working to create a new standard for government applications moving forward. We know that applying for government funding isn't easy. It can be really time-consuming as well, which is time that a lot of smaller businesses, as you will know, don't necessarily have time for. So right now, the way we've built our application process, you'll be able to apply, report, and close out your project in the same online portal that you can access through our website, which is great. So the way it works, we essentially have a two-step application process. If you are interested in applying, first you're going to go to our website. You're going to review the eligibility criteria to make sure that you feel that you're eligible. And then you're going to submit a statement of interest. So the statement of interest is just a way for our team to make sure that your project aligns with kind of the program objectives and that you pass all of the eligibility criteria. It's essentially a screening form for us, and the statement of interest really only takes about 10-15 minutes to fill out. It'll just ask some basic information about your business, your amount of full-time employees, are you revenue generating, things like that. And it'll ask you to provide a short, high-level description of your project. Our team will review the statements of interest, and right now our standard turnaround time is, I think it's 2 to 5 business days, but because we're coming up on a little over 2 weeks till the end of the application period, our team is trying to turn those out a little bit faster. So our team will review your statement of interest, and if your statement of interest is accepted, we will invite you to complete a full application. Following the application, and we're going to be reviewing all of the applications following the application closure. When you're submitting your application, I will go through this after the PowerPoint, but we have a great application guide that you're able to use that's on our website that goes through all the steps of the application, what we're looking for, documents that you have to have ready, and all of that great stuff so that you can make sure you're submitting a strong application. We are looking to have all of the applications evaluated within 60 business days of the application period's closure. So that means that sometime in the fall, businesses who are successful will be notified and invited to sign a contribution agreement. And in that contribution agreement is where the terms of repayment will be outlined. If there are terms of repayment, which I will get into in a minute. In terms of, just to kind of anticipate potential questions, our application deadline is July 31st, and this is a 2-stage process. So in terms of, if you're wondering, when's the last day that I should submit my statement of interest if I'm interested? As long as you submit your statement of interest about a week, so 7 days before the closure of the application period, that will give our team time to review it, get back to you, and for you to submit an application. So definitely get those statements of interest in sooner rather than later. And we also know that sometimes businesses seek support to help complete their application. And this is in our program guide, but we just wanted to make it super clear now in the presentation that it is against program rules to work with a consultant on your application who charges you a fee that depends on the success of the application, like a commission fee. And if you do that, it may render your application ineligible. So I just wanted to make that note now to make sure you're clear on what could happen if you work with someone to complete the application. So let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. So these are some examples of things that we're going to be looking at when assessing the applications. And we're generally looking at the proposal's viability, impact, benefits, and ability to achieve the program objectives. And they're when we're talking about the assessment criteria, these also help determine the type of repayment or funding that you would be offered by the program in your contribution agreement. So the program offers 3 types of funding: non-repayable, repayable, and conditionally repayable. And the type of funding that you're offered depends on the alignment with these program goals, your risk level, and your predicted benefits to Canada. So say your project has significant benefits to Canada and it's fairly low risk, you would likely be offered in your contribution agreement a non-repayable funding. So it's essentially a grant. It's funding that you don't have to repay back. If you have a great feasible project, the benefits to Canada aren't necessarily very prominent, but you have a feasible project, that could be a situation where maybe we would offer you a repayable funding. So more like a loan. For the purposes of the sufficient benefits assessment criteria, this refers to the clear and measurable advantages of the proposed project. So a proposal demonstrates sufficient benefits to Canada when it shows moderate to significant impact in at least 2 of the following benefit categories. So we're looking at public benefit, which focuses on how a project contributes to society and the environment. So clean energy, social inclusion, health and well-being, things like that. Innovation benefit, which evaluates how the project pushes the boundaries of AI. So that could be, groundbreaking advancements, global influence, IP registration. Or lastly, we're looking at economic benefits. So measures the project's impact on Canada's economy. Could be domestic compute resources, addressing a supply chain challenge, workforce development, things like that. So when we're assessing the benefits to Canada in your project, we will be looking at the public benefit, the innovation benefit, or the economic benefit. The benefits have to be well articulated, likely to materialize, and achievable within the defined time frame. Outside of benefits, we're also looking at things like market potential, financial capacity, technology readiness. Like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at projects that are around technology readiness level 6. That doesn't mean we wouldn't accept a project that's at TRL level 5, but that's around what we're looking for. And of course, also the degree of alignment with, departmental priorities, which I've outlined kind of more at the beginning of the presentation. I think we can move on to the next slide. Okay, eligible activities. What can I do with my money if I am a successful applicant? What can I do if I get funding? So when we're talking about eligible activities, these are things that program funding will cover. So program funding can be used to cover compute costs to your cloud service providers that are related to training, so training your AI models, inference, developing inference services, or another activity like modifying or improving your AI models. So I know others kind of a broader category, but these are kind of the things that we're looking at when we're looking at your project, and when you're asking for funding, these are the things that you're going to be asking for funding for. This means that things like storage costs, AI or machine learning processing, operational monitoring, these are eligible costs with your compute service provider. This would also mean that ineligible costs would include things like salaries for your employees who are working on the project. That would not be covered by the program. Data transfer fees, legal fees, anything like that that doesn't actually require compute would not be covered. We have also, like this pretty much outlines what is and isn't covered, but this is also included in our program guide. If you want to refer back to it later, we have a list of things that are and aren't covered. Next slide, please, Andy. Awesome. So what's next? What does the timeline look like for the program? So this is what to expect coming up. Like I said earlier, the current application period is closing on July 31st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So keep an eye on the time zone if you're kind of like submitting things in the last few hours, because I know this is Canada-wide. So it's closing on July 31st. We've had questions just to kind of preemptively address. We've had questions about when is the next application period? If is this current application period going to be extended if we have lots of applications? I just want to like address that now by saying currently there's no plan to extend the application period. The deadline is July 31st. So please, if you're interested, prepare to be able to submit by that time. And we haven't announced another application period at this time. So any updates like that would be available on our website. So kind of the point of what I'm saying is if you're interested, now is a good time to apply. Over the summer, like I said, we're going to be assessing applications. Our team's going to hunker down and make sure we get through all of the amazing applications that were submitted. And then by the fall, our evaluations will be complete and all of the successful applicants will be notified, and we'll start kind of working through those contribution agreements and getting those underway. I guess if you want to go to the next slide, Andy, that essentially wraps up my overview of the program. You can see here, if you want to follow along with me where I'm about to show you where to find stuff on the website, you can scan the QR code. The one on the right is to contact our team. We have been trying to get to inquiries as fast as possible. So if you think of questions you have like following this presentation that we're not able to get to, definitely reach out to us there. Okay. Andy, if you want to stop sharing your screen, I will share mine. Okay. Can everybody see that? Andy, can you give me a thumbs up if you see that? Yes. Okay, great. So this is our website. I'm sure a lot of you have checked out our website, so I'm not going to like go through the whole thing. This is where you sign in to submit your SOI. We have kind of all the details here on eligibility, funding details that I went over about like what constitutes repayable, non-repayable, conditionally repayable. But what I really want to direct you to are two things. Number one, if you go to the application process tab and you scroll down, we have our application guide linked. So if you click on the application guide, this is really where you want to go if you are building an application. So we cover our deadlines here. We cover our assessment criteria that I went over just now in the presentation. Here we have a list of mandatory and optional documents. So we're looking for, if you make it to the full application, like if your SOI is approved and you make it to the application, these are the things that you will have to include in your application. So we're going to need your board of directors, your two most recent financial statements. Like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have two, submit what you have. Please submit what you have. A detailed project budget. We have a template where you're going to have to fill out a project budget, information about your R&D team that's working on the project, any funding that you've received for the project. You're going to need a commercialization plan. And like I said, a copy of your service agreements. There are optional documents that will support your application that aren't, they're not mandatory, but they certainly help your chances. If you have a market analysis, if you have a letter of support from a referral partner. So if you're working with digital, or if you're working with another one of our referral partners, and they're able to give you a letter of support, that will also help in your application. Here we have, it'll run you through all of the sections of the application and explain to you what you're going to need and what a strong application will include. So you're going to go through all of that. And again, we have the documents listed down here just to make sure everyone's super certain. And finally, before I kind of stop talking and give everyone a chance to ask questions, I want to direct folks to our program guide that's at the bottom here. This is really the kind of the number one place you want to go to if there are certain things about the program you're unsure about. This stipulates all of the details of the program and certain little nitty gritty things that you may want to check up on or want to know. I think that's all. So I'll stop sharing my screen and we can kind of just dive into questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As you guys have been kind of going through and answering them and can kind of rapid fire. Some of them I'm trying to kind of group them as we go, but there's definitely been a lot, and I think hopefully you can address things around the Canadian, non-Canadian. If we have a Canadian-based hosting
Yes.
company, can we spend the money on AWS or Google? Does AI compute running in Google versus? So there's quite a number of those. So maybe you can kind of help to unpack that for everyone because it seems to be the burning question.
Absolutely. So we've actually gotten so many questions about this in our application. So many, in fact, that I should probably build it into future application or future presentations. But so we don't have a like an exhaustive list of what service providers count as Canadian and which ones count as non-Canadian. But what I want to say is that multinational companies like AWS that have Canadian registered entities. So like AWS has also AWS Canada, that can have infrastructure and data like usage that resides and stays in Canada. Those can count as domestic. So those multinational ones that have, if you're able to host your data domestically and have that, that's completely fine, and that will count as domestic. You're also able to have a mix of domestic and international or multinational like data use within the same project. Like we will accept working with multiple service providers in the same project as well. So yes, like we don't have a list. We don't have a list of approved ones. We just don't want to like show any favoritism towards any one service provider. But yes, you for those asking about like Google or AWS, the multinational ones can count. Absolutely.
And just to kind of another point on that, so there's some folks as well that are asking things around sort of the agreements, the pre-agreements,
Yes.
kind of showing proof of. So especially in the case of the Canadian sort of house side of things, is there things that will be supportive of that application that they demonstrate that it is indeed on the Canadian side? And what did some of those agreements, pre-agreements look like from your side?
Absolutely. So there are a few things, there are a number of things we'll accept for proof on that front. What we ask for is a service agreement. So like a contract, for example, that you would have with your service provider. We understand that there are like a lot of ways that folks can work with service providers. So really all you need is like documentation of any kind, terms and conditions, maybe like something like email confirmations from your service provider, any type of documentation that shows that you are like working with that service provider and like where you're working with them will fulfill that requirement. So we're not too picky on that front. As long as like the documentation you're providing us shows that, then we'll accept it.
Okay. I think there's a few more kind of further down, but we'll get into the meat of some of the other ones that folks have come in on, especially at the beginning of this.
For sure.
So one of them that's coming in says, as the requirement is TRL 6, it's
Mhm.
still quite a few behind what is kind of considered being commercial. So does
Yeah.
the 2-year financials with revenue mean that the TRL level is for the specific AI project and not other existing products
Oh,
and services underpinning?
yeah, so and the TRL level is really just like a general um it's a general to give you an idea of the type of stage we're looking for, but yeah, it's for the project. So when you're applying, think of it as like yes, your broader company and like your financials from your broader company will help us assess like things like risk. But you are applying for your project. So like in terms of like where you're at in commercialization, that really only applies to the project you're applying with.
Okay. One question that I believe I just want to clarify that we understood on the call sort of correctly was there was a part where you said that the 2 years of financial statements as part of the eligibility, but if you don't have it, submit what you have. So somebody said here, what about 1 year? So what is there
Yeah,
other things that they can send like a year's worth plus?
absolutely. So we put 2 years on there because that's what we're looking for. Um, but the requirement is to be revenue generating or have Series A financing. That's the actual like eligibility requirement. So when we're asking for 2 years of financial statements, that's what we're looking for to like prove that you're revenue generating, for example. But we've told this to people over email, and we're that's why we're saying this to everyone now. If you don't have 2 years, please submit 1 year. Like still submit it. It'll change. For example, it'll still affect your application, but it wouldn't rule you out. So like definitely still submit the 1 year of application or 1 year, sorry, of financial statements if that's all you have.
If that's all you have. Okay. And just also
Yeah.
to something that one of the questions that came through was that so that this is specifically geared to revenue generating Series A. So if you are not for profit, but your project could meet every criteria, you are otherwise not considered for this, at least at this time in this current phase.
Unfortunately, yeah. So you have to be for profit, you have to be revenue generating or Series A. So we have gotten emails in from people who are working on awesome projects and but they're not for profit, so they won't qualify for this.
Okay. Another thing that came up that does that seeking some clarification on is so if an applicant or an organization is working with, a grant writer or consultant or other sort of folks that they may have in their ecosystem to
Mhm.
support them on it, are they able to do that so long as there's no fees that are charged for this, or it's just discouraged writ large?
No, it's the fee piece. The
Okay.
fee piece is the key thing. We're not allowing consultants to help write applications and charge a fee that's dependent on the success of the application. It can be a conflict of interest, and we just want to rule that out of possibility. But working with grant writers, working with folks to help with your application, so long as that's not applied, is completely fine. And kind of on a similar adjacent note, maybe not the same note, but an adjacent note, I don't think I mentioned in the presentation, but you can apply as a team as well. There's just always one lead applicant. So, like, say you want to work with another business on a project, and you're applying as a team. Or as a partner, I guess. There's always going to be one lead applicant who is, responsible for the objectives and the contribution agreement, who fulfills all the criteria, and who is the lead on the project. But you are able to apply with a partner.
Okay, that's good to know. Not unlike sort of
Mhm.
innovation projects that are out there as well too, where there can be a
Totally.
lead work that's happening. Okay,
Yeah.
that's actually really great for those that are in there. Okay, now
Yeah.
a few more. We'll kind of keep going rapid fire.
Yeah.
The
Keep them
question
coming.
is, are you able to? There was one slide, kind of, I think it was your third slide in where you spoke about some of the innovation benefits. You said these are some
Yeah.
of the ones. Are you able to just take a moment to kind of walk through a couple of them again?
Yes, absolutely. I
Perfect.
have a list of them right here, so I'm just going to pull it up to make sure I don't miss any. But we wanted to make sure that when we're talking about what are benefits to Canada, that can be something that is very general and open to interpretation. So we wanted to make sure that was super clear. So just one moment, let me pull that up. So for our benefits section, we are looking at we're categorizing our benefits to Canada into three different things. And a proposal demonstrates sufficient benefits when it shows significant impact in at least two of the three categories. So, like we were talking about earlier, if you show significant benefits to Canada, that would be something that may render your application eligible for non-repayable funding. So, yeah, this is very significant to know. And I actually can. What I'll do is I'm going to copy this and paste it in the chat. But I'll go over it again quickly. So we have public benefits here. Let me make sure I'm sending this to everybody. Everybody. There are so many times I've thought I've been sending stuff to people, to the whole group in the chat, and it's only been to the panelists or
To the
something.
panelists.
Yeah. So we're looking at public benefit, innovation benefit, and economic benefit. So public benefit, it's how does your project contribute to society or environment? So like that's where we were talking about things like clean energy, but we're also talking about social inclusion, health and well-being, ethical AI practices, national security, things like that. And it doesn't have to be in the list of like examples that we have. There are other things that could be public benefit. But how does your project make society better is a way to think about it. There's also innovation benefits. So, we are looking at R&D in AI. We're looking at how can we push the envelope in Canada. So how does your project push that envelope? Are you making groundbreaking advancements? Is there going to be a potential for global influence on what you're developing? Are there meaningful collaborations happening with your project? And we also have, it's important to us Is there going to be meaningful IP registration that you want to keep in Canada? Like things like that. And then finally, with economic benefit, that's simply the project's impact on the Canadian economy. So, like I said earlier, addressing supply chain challenges, maybe generating new jobs, things like that generally would go into kind of like boosting the Canadian economy. So between those three, if you're able to show that your project addresses at least two of them, that would be considered a significant impact on Canada, a benefit to Canada.
Okay, wonderful. In terms of some of the eligibility pieces, does it also cover things like marketing, commercialization efforts?
Mm. For eligibility, it's not really accounted for significantly in the eligibility criteria in terms of the screening criteria, but that is something that will be evaluated in your full application for sure.
Is the cost of purchasing data for training models, for example, also eligible?
Purchasing data for training models. I guess I don't know. I can't answer that with 100% certainty right now. But the question that I ask myself when people are asking me, is this eligible and we don't have it in our list, is like, is it a compute cost that you are paying? Like, are you paying your service provider? Is it a compute cost? So that might be. Andy, I don't know if you or Peter have any insights on that one.
We're looking into it right now. We'll
Okay.
provide them.
Perfect.
Stay
Okay.
tuned.
And also for those that maybe you don't have the answer to at this point, we can also include it in the follow-up email with everybody and if some of those, the FAQs that we may not be able to answer today. One of the questions that came in also too is for those, if they get this funding, can they also still apply for SHRED, for example?
Yeah, so the program is stackable.
Okay.
And the specific details of the way that it's stackable are in our program guide, but essentially you can't you just can't have funding that exceeds 100% of your project cost. So you're making money off of the government support. That's really the only like qualifier caveat in stacking. But those specific details are in our program guide. So if you do have other funding for SHRED, for example, or anything else that you want to report, you'll have an opportunity to do that, but it absolutely wouldn't disqualify you.
Okay. And just a question, a couple that have come in around sort of the application process, the steps. So the SOI, the first step is due July 31st, and the full proposal is due only if you are accepted in after that review period?
So the way it works, good question. So the final application is due July 31st.
31st,
So
everything. Okay.
everything. So we've had our SOI open for a good while. I can't remember the exact date that we opened it, but it's been probably a couple months, I want to say. And so the idea is like, yes, you do need to submit an SOI and get an invitation from our team in order to submit a full application by that July 31st deadline. With that in mind, though, our team is like being very quick on getting through the SOIs to make sure that folks have the time to submit that application.
Okay.
But yeah,
for those
July
that are on the
31st
call
is the deadline.
Okay, the final deadline. So those that are on the call that are looking at what you've kind of walked them through in terms of the eligibility sort of criteria, saying, yes, we're meeting all of these.
Yeah.
Their first step is they must get their SOI in to demonstrate first and foremost before they can proceed to the full. Okay.
Exactly. So and to kind of give you for those who work better with dates, get it in ASAP. If you want to apply, get your SOI in ASAP. I would say don't get it in later than next Thursday. Because the 24th, because just for your own sake and for our sake, we need time to review it and send it back to you. Say we got it back to you by Friday, that leaves you a bit less than a week to complete the application. And while it's nothing, I mean, I think that full application is maybe like 9 pages, something like that, 8, 9 pages. As you saw in the application guide, it does require a lot of documentation. So kind of the whole purpose with that is just to make sure you have enough time to get your kind of things in order for the application. So I would say like submit your SOI by the 24th if you're interested, would be my recommendation.
Okay.
And if I could just piggyback on that real quick, is
Yeah.
just let folks know that the SOI is literally just an overview of your project. It wouldn't take much more than 10 to 15 minutes to complete, whereas the full application is a very detailed application with templates to fill out. And the reason for such a detailed application, as we've learned in the past, is to minimize a lot of that back and forth between us and the clients. And this portal that this application is, it's a newer type of technology for applying to programs. So it's really quick. So the SOI will only take 10-15 minutes, but before submitting your SOI, you log into the portal, you create your account, and then you confirm your identity right then and there, and that's done within minutes. And then once your account is created, you can go in and submit your SOI. Again, the SOI is very quick overview, 10-15 minutes, and then you'll wait. And then once we have gone through it, you will either be, invited to go ahead and fill out the full application, or you'll be deemed ineligible. So as Alex mentioned, we would strongly encourage folks that are interested in the program to go in, create an account, and fill out their SOI as soon as possible.
And if you're fairly certain you would be eligible, you're not 100% sure, but you're pretty sure, like feel free to submit one. That's the point of the SOI is to like confirm your eligibility. You're also fully welcome to reach out to us with your eligibility question and confirm that way before submitting an SOI. But it's better to try, better to give it a shot if you're not 100% sure.
And speaking of that, so for those that are wanting to apply, so as I understand, so you don't have a cap on how many applicants are applying now, but it would be dependent on how much dollars and how successful they are on the other side, like how many applicants will actually be ultimately accepted in?
Yeah, so we don't have a cap on applications. We have a $300 million like budget. And if the amount of applicants, the amount of eligible projects exceeds the amount of funding, then we have a prioritization structure that's outlined in the program guide. That'll just explain like how we would select projects over others if more than the funds allotted are eligible, if that
Are
makes
eligible.
sense.
Okay. And then around that too, there's a few questions that came in specifically around applications. So is there going to be something, for example, around tracking? Are people going to be able to either know where they're at? And if you don't get accepted into the SOI, do you also get an update? Because at some point, what does that look like?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you are notified of the status of your SOI once the decision is made. So you will find out if your SOI was declined. And when you log into your portal, you're able to see like what you've submitted and kind of, I don't know yet necessarily like what that will look like during the assessment period. I would imagine that like we will notify everyone of the decision kind of at the same time in the fall when everything's done. And it won't be like a case by case basis. So in terms of stay tuned on that front, but yeah, like you can definitely log into your portal and see where things are at.
Okay. And a couple other questions that have come in kind of in a bucket are around sort of the R&D side, right? So we've got folks saying, we're a small team. How many people do you require, in order to meet the eligibility? How and when does this get assessed from the R&D side? Do we need to, how many people do you require to be part of this, right? So maybe you can unpack that a little bit too.
Absolutely. And I almost wonder if it's helpful for me to show or send in the Peter or Andy, could you please send the link to the template, the budget template in the chat so folks can see it? It's on our website, but just the budget template is where you outline your R&D team. So that's why I'm kind of mentioning that. Okay. So in the eligibility criteria, we say less than 500 employees. And what that means is if you have no employees or one employee, you're still eligible. It just means that when it comes to the full application, when you're outlining your R&D team for the project, when we're assessing, we're considering, okay, based on what you've outlined your R&D team is, what's the feasibility of that team being able to execute this project in the allotted amount of time? So like if you have a super ambitious project and you have like a 2-person R&D team and it's not super feasible to get it done, like you're not able to prove that it's feasible, that's something that maybe that would be considered in your application. But we don't have a minimum or maximum, like we don't have a specific set number of people that you need to have on your R&D team.
Okay. Rapid fire continues.
Yeah.
How firm does our quote need to be for our anticipated costs?
Good question. Give it your best guess. Give it your best guess, especially in the SOI. It's you're choosing so we're covering your compute costs. Your compute costs in your project have to be between 100,000 and 5 million. Give it your best guess. In your application, if you move on to the application stage and it's changed by then, or your projection has changed by then, you can have an opportunity to change that. But your project budget, like in the template, you'll have an opportunity to basically like line by line explain like where you got your budget from. So like what the anticipated costs are for the specific pieces of your budget. So like, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's your best guess.
Okay. Can I be eligible if I am in the ideation stage of my business?
So if you're in the ideation stage of your business, my interpretation of that question is that your business is probably not like registered or incorporated yet, in which case you wouldn't be eligible. We're really looking if we're looking at this program in particular, we're looking at businesses who have a project that is kind of like, when we say TRL level 6 is kind of the general vibe, for lack of a better word. It's because we want folks to have like a prototype or have kind of be far enough along in their project that they're able to test it, and with access to the compute resources, develop it in a way that brings it closer to getting to market. So if you're in the ideation stage of your business, you would be in that really early development stage, and you would probably want to look at different types of funding before this type of program.
Okay. Questions come in around the hosting side saying, if we do our own hosting and house our own servers, would we be able to use the funds to offset some of our own costs?
Really good question, and we've had that question a lot. So short answer is no. The funding is specifically for like cloud compute costs. So if you are hosting your compute on your own servers, it wouldn't be like on your own in-house servers, it wouldn't be eligible.
Okay. One that's related also along these lines is, if we work with a Canadian IT company that uses Azure Canada, what will the project funding be, just for the Azure Canada part or for the IT company's involvement?
If you work for an IT company, that might be a question I need some time to process and think about. But if I would love to connect about that after.
Okay. And then similar on this is, we've currently covered by free credits from GCP, but expect them to be used up. So can we apply now and receive the funding later when we run out of the free credits?
Okay, so good question. The way credits work, the way credits will work within the scope of the program is your credits, like, okay, your costs are only eligible after you've signed a contribution agreement. Excuse me. So anything that you pay for before you sign your contribution agreement isn't eligible for funding. So you would want to wait until after you sign that contribution agreement.
Okay.
And sorry, if I could just jump in real quick on the contribution agreement. If your application is indeed successful and approved, then it'll be 30 days to sign that contribution agreement.
Good
point. 30-day window to sign the contribution agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect. One question that comes in is, our AI agent project is embedded within our online platform and is already in market. Do we still need to prove feasibility commercialization plans?
I mean, yes. I'm just wondering if, like, So if it's already in market, my guess is that they want the funding to develop it further, or that's what they'd be interested in the funding for. So yes, yeah, you still have to provide anything that's a mandatory document, like will be like flagged if you don't provide it. So you'll still have to provide those things, and like if you're already in market, you can kind of Andy, Andy or Peter, I'm just thinking out loud here. If it's already hit the market, there's no issue with that, right? Because they're still continuing to develop. My interpretation of the question is that they'd still be continuing to develop the project from the point that it's at. It's just already in the market.
Yeah, I believe you're right, because one of the points that you touched on was, where eligible activities for fund it's training or improving an already service, right? So if you're already in market and you want to improve your service or improve your product, then yes, that would be an eligible cost.
Okay.
Okay, then there's some questions that are coming in sort of around funding stuff. So will getting the angel round be okay?
I guess when we're looking at investment interest, we're looking at a minimum, like we say, a minimum of Series A financing. So I guess it just depends how much you're getting in that angel round.
Okay, and a follow-up to that somebody else had is, with their seed stage company with some revenue, say roughly 200K, but equity investments, can we still apply?
If you are revenue generating, yes. If you are revenue generating, regardless of what that revenue is, you fulfill that eligibility criteria.
Okay, so one around revenue generating and stacking was, will applicants be tiered? So maybe just to kind of walk through, stacking a company that has a team of 10 but is revenue generating against a company with a workforce of 499 that is also revenue generating seems a bit imbalanced.
I don't know if I fully understand the question. Could you please repeat it for me?
I think, will applicants be tiered? So as I understand it, like if you're looking at a company that has a team of 10 and is revenue generating versus, one that's 499 sort of team,
right,
that's also revenue generating. Like, is there a tiering of that, or is it tiering from funding if you run out, exhaust your funds?
I don't know that we can necessarily share like those types of specific details on how we'll be assessing. But I will say that like these things are going to be assessed. We're looking at all of the pieces.
Okay. So put your best foot in application forward basically to everyone.
Yes.
It'll be assessed as your entire application, not necessarily
on the entire merit.
Like holistically, yeah.
Okay.
And again, going back to the benefits of, Canadians and society and such. So it'll all be considered as a whole.
Perfect. Okay. And so somebody also again, it's the consultant thing. So if with professional consultants, they can still be paid a fee as long as that fee is not dependent on the success of the application.
Based on what's written in our program guide, yes.
Okay.
The fee just can't be, it can't be a contingency fee on whether or not the application is successful.
Okay. I think some of this you may have covered a little bit about where it talks about, compute costs vary over time, such as new models, infrastructure costs during the project. How is that accounted for?
I think that's something that you'll build into your contribution agreement. So when you're negotiating, when you're kind of setting the terms of your contribution agreement, that's when you'll kind of account for that.
Okay, and then there was another question around the project budget template. There's no category for commercialization or marketing costs. How would you include these costs?
I guess in your, and Andy or Peter, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but those are just, I don't know that those costs would be necessarily like outlined in the project budget because they could be covered in the marketing or commercialization plan if you want, but because we're not offering funding for those things, I think that's why they're not in the template. Would you agree with that, Andy or Peter?
I agree with that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Some of these questions I haven't had before, so if I'm kind of
No
thinking on
worries.
the
Yeah,
fly,
yeah. There's
that's
a
what,
lot, and we've
yeah,
got a very keen audience that have got a lot of questions.
it's great. It's good.
At what step in the process will we know if the funding is repayable or a grant during the contribution agreement?
It's the contribution agreement. So, like to kind of dive into that a little more, I completely understand that like these are very different types of funding. I mean, between getting non-repayable funding and fully repayable funding, they're like very big differences, and that's something that you would have to consider. Like as a company, like if you're offered one type of funding and it's not going to work for you, that's like kind of your opportunity to like decline, I guess. But that is the point where we've evaluated your application, we've assessed the kind of things we need to assess to determine if there are sufficient enough benefits to Canada that we're able to offer you that. The conditionally repayable one in the middle is kind of a it leaves room for repayable funding to turn into non-repayable if certain milestones are met. So like say you create a bunch of jobs, or like say there are benefits that you might be able to achieve, but you're not able to fully prove that in your application. That would be a circumstance where maybe you'd get a conditionally repayable funding that is kind of determined by certain milestones in your project. So to kind of summarize, yes, you would find that out in your contribution when you're offered a contribution agreement.
Okay. A couple more sort of questions that are here too. Is there a time horizon for the project? 12 months, 24 months, 36-month costs?
Yes. So it is I'm just looking here to see if I have the exact dates, but the project has to fall within the program authority. So it has to fall, it's 3 years. It has to fall within the 3 years.
2028.
Pardon?
March 31st, 2028.
There we go. Thank you. Yes. So the project has to be within that time frame.
Okay. Again, another revenue piece. So please reiterate on revenue. Does it matter? Does it not? Did you say it doesn't matter how small the revenue is?
The revenue, like, okay, it's not that it doesn't matter, it doesn't render you ineligible. So when we're talking about revenue, in order to be eligible to even like submit an application, you have to be revenue generating or have at least Series A financing. That revenue, the amount of revenue matters in your application insofar as like ability to carry out the project and like risk management and factors like that. So the amount of revenue you have, or like the amount of money you have to put into your project outside of our funding, and you're basically the feasibility of it, the way your revenue impacts the feasibility of your project, those things are considered. So it's not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't render you ineligible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another person that's looking for clarity again around this eligibility criteria about, say, only training costs before commercial launch. And so then the TRL you consider for commercial launch. What about more controlled availability releases, not fully commercially available? Looking for a definition here.
So I'm kind of curious if, sorry, are they asking,
It says
are they
talking about
asking,
eligibility criteria and say only training costs before commercial launch. What TRL do you consider commercial launch? What about more controlled availability releases, not fully commercially available? They're looking
so
for
I guess the
guidance.
idea of the program is that you're headed towards bringing whatever project it is to market. Um, those costs, I think commercial TRL would be 9 or 10. I think is 10 the actual commercialization. It's either 9 or 10. It's been a minute since I've looked through all of them. And if it's pre-commercial and if you don't have an intention to bring the project to market, that doesn't really align with program goals, to answer that question.
Perfect. Thank you. And then you'd also mentioned too that if computing services are contracted by a wholly owned US subsidiary, those costs would still be eligible.
Yes. So they're still eligible. It's just the amount of funding you receive for your project is less. So if you worked with a, say, fully US compute service provider, you would be eligible to have half of your compute costs covered by the program. Yeah, that it's not, it doesn't render you ineligible. It just determines how much funding you would be eligible for.
Okay.
And as far as the multinational corporations, there's a list of like countries where like we're not able to do business with those countries. Like anything within those countries is not allowed. I can't, if I don't know if Andy or Peter, you'd be able to find that list. But the US is fine.
Was it if I understand correctly, is the list of countries that you can't work with? Was that the original question?
Yeah, there's like a list of countries that
There's
like
a list of
have
countries that are not in
sanctions
good
between
standing.
Canada.
Like where sanctions are in place
The
or other things,
sanctions
sort of,
one,
for
yeah.
example. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So
Yeah.
folks
Not
can,
in
okay.
good standing and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the questions also came in was if as part of a proposal, costs are accrued at one of their research partners, for example, say a hospital, and the use of their cloud infrastructure, would those costs be eligible?
That is a really good question.
So
I'm
the
not sure. I
hospital
think
is storing the compute?
Yeah. If as part of our proposal, we have costs accrued at our research partners, so for example, a hospital, and the use of their cloud infrastructure, would those costs be eligible?
I think it would depend. This is me thinking out loud. So like I'm gonna put the asterisks of like please follow up with us after this to confirm. Me thinking out loud is that if you're applying with the hospital as like a partner and the compute costs are built in, then perhaps, but also I'm not 100% sure if I'm not 100% sure. We're going to need to follow up on that, on the details of that one, because I don't want to give out incorrect information.
Sure. And some of that, yeah, might just be bespoke that they reach out to you kind of with
Yeah.
those questions and stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I guess they'll follow up. They'll find a way to find you guys. And then
Yeah, please follow up, whoever that was.
one of the last ones was, I guess somebody was asking, and if I understand this question correctly myself as I read it, this is for IT companies, not for a company which wants to develop its own AI projects for their own company.
Yeah, so this is for companies who are like developing AI products with the intention to bring them to market, AI products or services. So if you are, I don't know, if you're a company that is not like technology related and you're just trying to get funding to use an AI in-house, that's not what this program is for. It's like really for the intention of developing AI to bring to market.
Wonderful. And with that, we're after 12. This was a hot button topic and discussion. And I know for those that have more sort of specific questions sort of related to some of these, research and other sort of things to reach out to you all directly. Before I hand it off to Zane to close us out, I just wanted to say thank you again for your time, for carving this out in something that is, vital in this current moment for our country, for our innovation economy, for taking the lead on this. And we look forward to seeing where all of this goes. So thank you again for carving out time. We'll definitely look forward to hearing more from you.
Thanks so much for having us, Jen, and thanks for taking charge of those questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Zane. Off to you.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you all once again for joining the informational webinar today, hosted by Digital and our wonderful director of IP, Jane. All those attending today will receive a follow-up email in the next couple of days with any of the resources discussed throughout the session. That's including the presentation with the webinar recording. And that's it from us at Digital. We see you at our next webinar session. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Take care.
Bye.